All right, welcome everybody to this edition of Breaking Absolutes. So pleased that I was finally able to connect with Billy Sheehan. He's going to join us today. Such a long and successful career. There's a lot of ground to cover. Many of you, of course, are going to be familiar with Billy. But let me do some setup for those who are less familiar, or if you know of him or have heard his music and aren't aware of all of it. um, there's almost not a respected, high caliber practicing musician today that Billy hasn't collaborated with in some way. And I know that that's a hyperbolic statement, but when you've got guys like Steve Vai and Tony McAlpine and David Lee Roth and Greg Howe and Richie Kotzen and Mike Portnoy, and the list goes on, you begin to sort of see a pattern of excellence and association between musicians who are obviously recognizing in Billy, if they're asking him to participate, and that's even beyond the bands that he has founded himself and driven at a level of musicianship and commercial success that is really remarkable. So that's part of who he is as a player. He's been there's not enough ink in the world to enumerate all of the various best of lists that he makes as a bass player. One of the things that I believe, and we'll talk about in the show, is I think that his work and his career makes a very strong argument for being a player who changed the way bass is played and the way generations of bass players look at the instrument and look at ways to excel with the instrument. And I think that's part of Billy's legacy. Not that he's not still going to do a ton of music, but I think it's even bigger than just the music in some ways. He was a part of the David Lee Roth Eat 'Em and Smile, which had all kinds of chart positions. Founder of Mr. Big, which had a number of major hits. Their one big single you probably remember, To Be With You, was a number one in 15 countries and spent 3 weeks at the top on the Billboard charts. And there's a lot of these kind of accolades for Billy. And we'll point you to those later because I don't want to take up a bunch of time on just his bon mots, but I wanted to give you enough to understand a little bit of the success that this guy's had. So with that as my preamble, let me bring the man on. Billy Sheehan, welcome.
Well, thank you for all that, all those kind words. I'll try to live up to that.
Well, you don't really even have to live up to it because this is all stuff that you've accomplished. I get a chance to kind of remind everybody of this kind of altitude of success. And I know that you're not a guy to take it for granted, but I think it bears repeating. So that's all. I was just kind of setting that up.
Very, very kind to say. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so let me just start with the simplest thing. And you and I talked briefly about this before we came on the show, but how have you been weathering the pandemic? Like, what is your life been like the last 18 months?
Oh, it's actually been pretty nice. I love to play live. I live to play live, but I hate traveling. So getting to and from on tour bus, yeah, but on flights, I despise it. So there's been very little flying recently, which is nice. But I've been working a lot at home, practicing a lot, working on a lot of new music. I'm recording for people all around the world. So it's been quite a busy time.
Yeah.
And we were very lucky a few years ago to find an amazing home here in Nashville. And we're surrounded by woods and wildlife, and it's beautiful and serene and peaceful and safe and calm. So it's been nice to be home. This is the longest I've been home since the 70s. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I have to admit, I've seen some of your posts on Facebook, and so you do these beautiful pictures. I'm like, where's he taking these pictures? That's your backyard, those woods, yeah?
It's beautiful, yeah. I'm very, very fortunate to have a situation like this now. I did a lot of home handyman things around the house too while I was off, so I got a lot of things done, and I need to play. I gotta play. Playing is everything. Live playing is everything to me.
Yeah.
So that's been. But in the meantime, I've been practicing a lot. I've been putting hours and hours and hours in on my bass and improving a lot of things. Just I've been doing so much recording. Your ability to perform on someone else's material and do it in a way that pleases them It's a skill in itself as well. So I've been working on that quite a bit, and we seem to have been successful at it. So it's all good.
Yeah. Well, it is one of the, I don't know if silver lining is a good term, but one of the consequences of the pandemic is musicians able to reconnect with family and home, and then do a bunch of recording. Some folks are writing new material, and I know you're doing that too. And we're going to get to Winery Dogs in a minute. But I know you also get a lot of nods to collaborate. So it sounds like you're still doing plenty of that during this time.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've done tracks for people, from India, from Indonesia, from Belarus, from Italy, from Germany, from all over the USA, from Japan, from Australia, all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's keeping in touch with people around the world.
Hey, so share with us. I want to kind of go back to early Billy. What formulated your interest in this genre of music? And then the second part of that question is, why the bass? Like, was there some reason you chose the bass, or did you fall into that?
I'll do the second question first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I when I was very young, around the corner from my house was a guy named Joe Hesse, and he was a bass player, and he was a really cool guy, and he had a Triumph motorcycle and beautiful girlfriend, and he was a bass player, and I wanted to be like Joe. I mean, Joe was just a super cool guy, and I looked up to him. And I remember my brother saying to me, we're listening to radio as a little kid. And he goes, "Yeah, you hear that there?" I go, "Yeah, yeah, that's the bass." I go, "Yeah, like Joe plays. Yeah, that's the bass." And when I'd sleep at night, because I was a little kid, they wouldn't let me go near where they were rehearsing. I had to go to bed early, and I'd lay in my bed. I could hear the bass, through the distance from his house, like you hear a subwoofer on a car stereo from very far away. You hear the bass first. So I just was enthralled with it. Finally, one day, Joe let me in the house, and I got to pick his bass up and plucked it for a little while. Got a blister on my finger. It bit back right away, so I knew that we had a future together. And then when I saw the Beatles play on the Ed Sullivan Show on that actual broadcast, and I saw the girls screaming, I knew that I wanted that for my job. Why not the bass? And I was lucky initially because bass players were difficult to find. Everybody had a guitar, but not as many people had a bass. So you almost always had an offer for a gig.
Yeah.
So got gigs right away, got in bands right away. So that was good. But yeah, it just, and it kind of spoke to me. I'm tall and skinny, so is the bass. It's low, and so is my voice, low. So it's, kind of worked out well like that. And the guitar, of course, is the glory instrument, or a lead vocalist, even more glory. The bass is more of a working man thing. You're back there with the drummer, you're holding it together, you're doing your thing, and it's a vital foundation to the rest of the band.
Sure.
I kind of like being in that position of just holding things together and what have you. So that's why the bass. And your first part of your question was?
Well, and you answered it, kind of how you came to it. It sounds like the Beatles were formative in your
Absolutely
path.
Yeah. All kinds of music too. My mom was a music lover, mostly Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett, great singers, big bands. Yeah. I got into a lot of big bands when I was beginning, as far as the jazz rock, Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, bands like that. It was my first band out of high school. And then just whatever genre you can imagine we've been through, because as we played through the years, a new band and a new thing would come out, and we'd adapt to that and adapt to the next thing. So, we were playing straight up copy tunes, Stones, Beatles, Hendrix, and then some more elaborate stuff came, and then prog came, and then Van Halen came, and then AC/DC came, and all those things changed the local bands until eventually I got in a situation where I was performing original music and making records and what have you.
Well, I have to tell you, when you start by saying, the sort of working man and being in the back, just kind of keeping things together, I almost laughed a little bit, because while all of that's true, your career has been far from just being the guy in the back. Like, you've made that instrument and the way you play it a force. Like, it is a lead instrument, and there's a ton of music we're going to talk about that proves that.
Well, because I played in a three-piece band for so long, we didn't want to hire an extra guy because you make $100 a night, you get $33 each. If you got 4 guys, you only make $25 each. So it was an economic factor back in those days for sure.
Oh yeah.
But so we because we didn't have a rhythm guitar player or a keyboard player, I had to do a lot of extra things on the bass to make up for it. So when the guitar player soloed, I had to do a lot more than just hold a single note, because it kind of, okay, we're in the key of G. Is it major or minor? How you have to kind of spell it out with the bass lines. And so being in a 3-piece band for so long was a big help to me. Just coming up with different ways of creating a foundation for the guitars, implying instruments that aren't there, like we do Carry On Wayward Son, and we play it. I do the keyboard stabs, or I do horn parts, or the rhythm guitar was doing something, I'd mimic it in some ways on the bass without losing the low end. So there was always bass, of course. So that was certainly a contributing factor. And we were a copy band, so we had to play songs by all kinds of bands that had all kinds of instrumentation. So we had to make up for it. So we did. I remember we did White Punks on Dope by the Tubes, which is an elaborate production with the chorus and the full band and synth and keyboard and all kinds of stuff. So, but we pulled it off as a 3-piece. We got it. We made it happen.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Well, it's interesting to hear some of the first inclinations towards taking the bass beyond the root notes, because it's so much of your music. I mean, you're still doing all kinds of music, but some of the music you've done, I mean, the bass is kind of the feature. And I'll be honest with you, I love that. A group that I was in, we had a player who was after your fashion, where they used the instrument in lots of ways and used a lot of chords and different things that I know you've done. And it's intimidating for some players, because that it seems like you're taking up the sonic space, and you
don't want to do that. That's why Sons of Apollo, a band I'm currently playing in, there's a lot of keyboards and a lot of low end. So I pull way back, and I play much less, other than the things that are required for me to play within the arrangement of the song, right. Various lines that I have to double or harmonize or whatever. But there's the more guys, the more instrumentation and careful planning there must be between their roles. Whereas in a 3-piece band, it's pretty much anything goes. The drummers are more busy. The guitar players are busy. Everybody sings usually, and the bass player gets to move around a lot. Grand Funk Railroad. And of course, today, I don't know when this is going to air, but we lost Dusty Hill from ZZ Top earlier. Yeah. And what a great, great, great player, and holding it down together for Billy Gibbons and Frank Beard. One of the greatest players ever. It's a sad day for bass today, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. And that's a group that had such an iconic, unique sound.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
so great.
Yeah, it's never to be replaced.
No.
Well, let's talk a little bit, just a little bit more about the instrument. I did a little bit of reading here, and it sounds like the first bass that you began to really lean in on modifications to sort of help it do the things you wanted to do was a precision bass. Am I right there?
Right there. That's her right in the front. I refer to it as the wife.
Yeah.
Constantly, people would knock on my door, and I'd walk through the door with my bass on, and they go, well, "Don't you ever put that thing down?" No, I actually probably don't. It's with me almost all the time, and that's her right there. Behind it is her sister, who was a backup bass I kept on the road with me when I was touring with this. But that bass was all the Talas shears, everything up to David Lee Roth, and then Eat 'Em and Smile, and the first Mr. Big record and Mr. Big tour. And I retired it at one point when Yamaha made these basses, the Attitude basses, which were based solely on the dimensions. The neck is the same size as that old Telecaster neck, same configuration of pickups, dual output to 2 different amps. That's what I use a lot. So, but I didn't want it to be on the road with me too much more. The body's cracked and it's been beat up, and if you lick it, it's salty. And salt is my salt, so don't lick it.
There's so many great jokes I could make right there. Well, one of the things I read that you did in modifying it was you scalloped out the five highest frets.
Yeah, it's done on this one also by scalloping the edge of a scallop shell of these little cutouts.
Yeah.
Kind of scalloping is where you cut the wood out from in between the frets, and on its base and on that also the last few frets are smaller fret wire, so it's a little more accurate in if the note is sharp or flat, it's more accurate if it's the fret is smaller, and it helps you get. So it helps you just get to that bend.
Yeah.
It helps you get underneath the string there a little bit to make that bend, because
Oh,
bass strings are quite a bit heavier than guitar strings. So when you're doing a bend, it requires a little more muscle and a little bit more callus too, because it hurts.
yeah, that's fascinating. How did you come by? Is that just an instinct you had to make that, or did you read that somewhere?
I heard about it in the '70s because John McLaughlin from the Mahavishnu Orchestra, wonderful, incredible guitar player, and one of the first really prog bands, jazz mix bands that there was, brilliant band. He had done it, and I'd seen a guitarist friend of mine in Buffalo that had done it too, but I didn't pay much attention to it until we went on tour, Talas and Yngwie, summer of '85, and Yngwie's necks are completely scalloped. And I thought, I still like the idea, but I don't want to lose that much wood by doing the whole neck. So I just did the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it was in the hotel room with my Dremel Moto tool, and I was and it flipped and went across the fret. So I said, okay, enough. So, and I only went halfway across, only because the big frets at the bottom, they bend rather easily because they're loose, and plus you could never push that down into the wood anyway.
Yeah.
Where these, are on the higher notes, as you bend the note, you can hear that.
Yeah.
That wiping, that it's scraping on the wood a little bit.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's not a really necessary thing. I play basses without it, and it's fine. But because we had it on the wife originally, we grandfathered it into these basses, and it's a little tribute to the old girl.
Yeah, that's right. And and I think I think it shows some innovation on your part. You also introduced a neck pickup.
Well, I didn't introduce it. It came from a guy. A lot of basses in the early days, in the '60s, had a big fat pickup near the neck, as opposed to here or near the bridge here.
Yeah.
Near the bridge, it's going to be real trebly sound. Here's going to be just kind of the middle. The precision bass had that pickup. These are P-bass style pickups, DiMarzio version. That's kind of the universal tone. But that super deep low end had a different thing to it. So if I play just that pickup, just super deep low end, and that's going through a separate amp. So in the three-piece band, there was always low end bass. If there was feedback or harmonics or any other crazy things, they would come out of this pickup in a different amp. So we always had that low end there. It was a super important thing. When you hear, now I've been corrected on the internet, certainly not the first time, Paul McCartney's bass for a song called Rain by the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's actually a Rickenbacker bass, but I do believe that it's still a neck position pickup, because his Hofner bass had that neck position pickup. It was a very popular tone in the '60s going into the '70s.
Yeah.
Then I've seen a lot of iconic bass players who have done the same thing. Mel Shacker from Grand Funk Railroad, on his jazz bass, he put a big neck position pickup there. All the Alembic basses were the first handmade bass that was readily available. They all had dual output and a neck position pickup. Rickenbacker had a Ricco Sound, which is a stereo plug. I have two mono instead of stereo, but with a separate output for each pickup. A bunch of other bass players. The bass player from who's the Indian band that had a "Come and Get Your Love," Redbone. That bass player had a big EBO pickup on his bass. I never knew him or anything like that, but so it was an idea that wasn't. I came up on my own, but a lot of other people came up with the same idea, because it makes sense to get the super deep low end out of a P-bass style bass. So
Yeah.
that was about it. It was a long way to go to answer that. Sorry.
No, that's all fast, and it leads into where I was going with that. So there was some precedent for it, but you you are sort of known for a signature sound. I mean, there's a sort of a Billy Sheehan sound, is there not, where you're using the two amps and you're running distortion on one? Am I accurate there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a mixture of actually three sounds: completely clean normal bass, super deep low end, completely clean, and on the distortion goes on or off. So for To Be With You, the distortion would be off, of course, because it's a just simple, easy ballad. But when the song gets fast or loud and heavy, you knock the distortion in, and it sounds like there's a rhythm guitar player playing also, because that distortion is coming out of a separate amp. So again, the three-piece idea, it helps just build that wall of sound to keep things together.
Yeah, no, I love it. I remember the first live player, bass player I ever played with, who used some distortion, and it was a revelation to me. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the sound you get out of that, as well as the way you play it, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. I have a question I'm sure you've answered before, but I couldn't find an answer to it. So in this world, and you belong to groups that are very, have all the chops, and you've done your own fusion stuff, and we're going to talk about some of that cool music in a minute. But you've never really adopted the 5 and 6 string bass that I've seen as a primary instrument. Is that true? And if so, was there a reason you've kind of stayed where you're at?
Well, the 4 has a thing. There's a curvature to the neck that works with your hand really well. And if I need super low, I can either use the D tuner, which is a thing on the back of the neck where I can do that little thing, and the note goes down from an E to a D. So I can get that low note. And if I need to bend that down to the low B of a 5 or 6 string.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I can bend it if I need to. And if I do really need a low tune bass, I do have a 6-string bass here that I played the song Just Take My Heart, Mr. Big Song. I used a 6-string bass on. But or I'll just take a regular 4-string and string it B, E, A, D.
Okay.
The last 4 strings of a 5 or 6-string bass. And my double neck that I use with Sons of Apollo, one bass is normal tune, the other one is tuned down to the B, E, A, D configuration. So I can get all those super low notes. But I'm just used to that curvature. My hands, the way everything works is 4 strings, and it's been that way for over 50 years. So switching to the 5 or 6, if you play a 5 or 6, fantastic, that's great. But I just prefer the 4, and I can get that note other ways too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I like the creative nature of the way you do that. The first time I saw that sort of hip shot detune thing, a bass player by the name of Michael Manring, he does a thing where he's got a bunch of those, and it's really cool how using that to move between chord progressions and resolve chords is really impactful. So I'm a big fan of what you're doing.
They make them for guitars too. I got them, and most any guitar I have, I'll put a detuner on it as well. And I think Ed Van Halen at some point with his Floyd Rose tailpiece, they made a special thing so you can drop that low E down to a D also.
Oh, okay.
For songs like Unchained, that was the low D tuning. The E string was tuned down to a D for that song and several others. So
yeah. Well, let's move on to the music. So, and I want to start with your solo career. You've done by my count, you've done 4 solo records, and these are I could be wrong about this, Billy, but I don't think you're as known for these as you should be.
Well, that's very kind. I again in reference to the great Dusty Hill. On my last solo record, Billy Gibbons came and played a solo on a song that I did, and what an honor to have him on my record. I'm just a ZZ Top fan. And but thank you very much. The records weren't necessarily designed to be like a psychotic bass record. They're just straight up music and songs and singing. Yeah. So maybe I should knock the singing off. I know how to clear out a room really to get a guitar and start singing. And where'd everybody go? So. Well,
there's I want to reference a couple of them. So the first record's called Compression. The second one's called Cosmic troubadour. And
Yes.
once I got going on listening to a bunch of this stuff, I got caught up. Spent hours listening to this music because
Uh,
there are tunes that are just, many of them, of course, rip because you have that facility and you can do it so musically. But then there's stuff that there's a song called Dreams of Discontent that's got this, you do this cool harmonics, and it's got this, it's an instrumental. It sounds like you've got multi tracks of bass in that because it's so lush. But it's a place where, like, to me, the bass is the thing you're, and not unsurprisingly, because you're the bass player and it's your record. But the sonically, the experience is the bass is first, and it's for that, it's very unique. Was that
well,
the desire?
yeah. Well, as usual with most things, there's no real plan in the beginning. It
Gotcha.
just
Happens.
rolls along, and nature takes its course, and that's how it ends up. And that happens so much. It's funny when we go to Japan and any of the bands, the incarnations that I go there with, they always ask questions about, did you plan, or will you plan this? And I always say, there's no, we just kind of roll the dice
And write the
and
tune.
go with it. So, and a lot of those records, my last concern was the bass. I was more concerned with songwriting. I'm playing baritone guitar, a lot of baritone 12-string guitar. And then we said, forgot about the bass. let me put some bass down. So it wasn't really thought out as much. It was more spontaneous with the bass. I hope to do a record coming up pretty soon with Ray Lugiere. He's a drummer for Korn, a dear friend of mine, an amazing player. We've just been playing bass and drums together for a long time, coming up with some wild stuff. So that might end up being the fourth record, somewhat solo, but still with Ray's heavy contribution from Ray, of course.
Well, wouldn't it be the fifth record because you did Prime Cuts? I guess that's a compilation.
Oh yeah, it was a compilation. Yeah, you're right.
And then Holy Cow. Well, that sounds great. I would love to hear this new effort. Is that something that's like is going to happen, or you're just toying with that idea?
We've got a lot of the framework built, so hopefully we can get the roof on at some point and get it going.
I love the metaphor. You're one of the best metaphor guests I've had. I just want a couple of more call outs for folks because I want to commend you to this music. But on the Prime Cuts record, there's a tune called Elbow Grease. It's got some amazing, it's all amazing playing, but this one's features, it sounds like a Hammond organ to me. There's an inclusion in Prime Cuts of Trees, the Rush cover you did, which,
Oh
yeah, really, really well done. Great homage to Getty, who I'm
yeah,
sure,
we all love.
yeah,
We all
we all
lately.
know and love. There's a tune called, ironically, as I was kind of following your career, I was listening to the bass solo, which is from a concert, I think, in Buffalo in 1994, that is just over the top amazing. Like I'm glad that the sound guy captured that on the soundboard, if that's how that happened, because I literally heard that and said, "Holy cow!" And then I saw your next record's called "Holy Cow." But tell
And
us.
that the animal on the cover turns out is a steer. It's not a cow. So
Well, close
I'm
enough
just,
for government work. Well, how did that bass solo get captured? Was that just a cut that was from the soundboard?
yeah, probably, yeah. So there's no edits on it. It's all completely live. And I've done a couple solos over the years, like live at Budokan. Every Mr. Big tour, we end up doing some shows at the Budokan in Tokyo. And it's as I watch it, I remember being there and doing it, and I didn't give it much thought. But as I watched it, I go, it's pretty precarious to be in the middle of the entire Budokan on the second stage with just the bass and be surrounded by about 10,000 people. And any mistake or any error would be glaring. So
Yeah.
precarious to say the least, but somehow I managed to land on my feet at that point. But
Oh,
yeah, there's been a bunch of solos recorded over the years. I just found some fan just sent me a cassette,
oh my
and I
gosh.
just digitized. And there's a couple of solos on it and such. from the old days. I have quite a digital archive of a lot of things I've done through the years. Some call me a hoarder. I'll refer to it as archivist. But from early days of Mr. Big, early days of Talas, demos, outtakes, live shows, sound checks, things like that. So there's at some point I have a YouTube channel now, and I've just been telling people how to work on their bass or put a pickup in or something like that. But at some point I'll start to post some of the rarer archive stuff and give it a little bit of an explanation. Even some of the embarrassing stuff I'll post.
No, that would be great, because this, it's I think it speaks to you as a musician that in that sort of unaccompanied environment, you do so much with the instrument. That particular solo, it's also surprising because you're doing things and changing up techniques, and it all flows musically. But it's not just you playing a bunch of scales or it's really musically refreshing. So if you've got more stuff in the archives, yes, please share them.
Well, it's very kind of you to say. I'm a big fan of classical music, and classical music has structure and form and a beginning and an end and a repeat theme, and there's a thing to it, like there is in many songs. Intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus,
Right.
second verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, out. And there are many formulas to that. But in a solo, I've been doing it for a long time. The first song I did, an unaccompanied solo in, was a song called Mr. Big. And it was a song by Free. And it was quite an active bass playing. Andy Frazier is a bass player, great player. And he's all over the place, and it's really cool. So one night I just told the band, "You guys stop, and then I'll go, and then I'll cue you and come back in. You sure you know what you're doing?" No, but we'll do it anyway. And we did, and it worked pretty well. So that was in the early 70s, So we kind of kept it in the show, and it became a thing. And by doing an unaccompanied solo for so many years, you begin to, like anything, you start to fine tune it and build things into it and realize, like a movie, it's got to have, a scene by scene. There's the love scene and the car chase and the shoot 'em up and the suspenseful ending and the big reveal, and almost cinematographically, which is actually a word, we try to put that together. So, and the prime reason is to make it entertaining, because it's not about look how fast I can play. Let's do some music that actually comes together as something that hopefully a non-bass player, non-musician would find entertaining. Yeah. Because I think sometimes a lot of musicians get lost in this musician thing, and they forget that people out there, they're not musicians. And if you played something that other musicians might be impressed with, the people, it's not their thing, So I've always tried to remain connected to the sensibility that someone out there listening may just be there to hear music. So let's make it music,
Yeah, and I love that. And you're playing certainly evidences the technical facility, but I definitely hear this sort of music approach. And you've talked about this even in this interview, places where you recognize where you want to pull back because there's other things going on, and other places where there's just more room for you. The last thing I want to say about your solo career is the Holy Cow record. You had Doug Pinnick on that record, right?
Yes, the great Doug Pinnick.
Yeah.
Sang a song called The Turning Point, and came over to my house, and I love Doug completely. He's one of the greatest people in the world, and what a talent. King's X should have been bigger than U2. Why they weren't is a sad thing, but it's so great. Those first two records, every musician I know fell in love with that band. It was just so great.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And some of the music on your Holy Cow record has at least a couple of the tracks. Even before I got to the track Turning Point, I think it was the track in a week or two, there's a little bit of a King's X feel in that.
Oh, well, I take that as a very, very kind compliment, because I do love that band myself.
Yeah, and this particular record, and it ends, I think, with a song called Cell Tower, which is a bass tour de force, and it's got all of the sort of explosiveness, and then it goes into this halftime thing that's just so like airy and refreshing. I'm just kind of giving people pointers to tracks that I think can be gateways into the broader Billy Sheehan world.
You're hired.
Yeah, I'm hired. Let's transition and talk about some of the bands. So the first sort of big band that you were in that had a lot of recognition and some success was Talas.
Yeah, we were based out of Buffalo, New York. Went through many incarnations. So the last one was actually the version 8 or 9, Talas. And in 1980, one version of the band opened up for Van Halen for about 30 shows. And it was quite a turning point for us to be exposed to that and be on the same stage with a huge band like Van Halen.
Yeah.
And it was a huge, I loved that band so much. I loved all of them, Eddie, Al, Mike, and Dave, of course. And we went through many changes. After that, we thought we'd be a shoe-in to get a deal and get signed, but it didn't happen. And we kept trying and pushing. And it was frustrating, difficult time. Uh, Faced with uncertainty. Then they changed the drinking age in the clubs from 18 to 21. So the club business dropped in half.
Yeah.
And so everybody was worried that we could be, you know, we all quit our day jobs. And now we might have to go back no, I never actually had a day job, but in fact, we may have to go to plan B. And then luckily, we were revitalized. We reconstructed Talas again for the final time, did a tour with Yngwie. And then on that, the same week, we got 3 phone calls. One was from the William Morris agency, booking agency, say, hey, we would love to put Talas on with Yngwie for his first U.S. tour. Okay. The next one was Gold Mountain Records, Danny Goldberg. He later went on to manage Nirvana. He wanted to sign the band. So, okay, we got our record deal. And the third call was from David Lee Roth's office saying, Dave's doing a movie and he wants you to be in it. What? So I said, what in the world is that about? So we were going out to LA to start the tour. So I arranged to have a meeting and I found out, yeah, there is a movie, but unknown to anyone at that time, he'd quit Van Halen and wanted to start a band and said, you and me, let's go find a guitar player and drummer and do it. And bang, that was the end of Talas. I always said to people, now there's only one band I'd leave Talas for, that'd be Van Halen. But I love Michael and, I don't want to see him go, but man, I love Van Halen. And when Dave called, I said, close enough.
Yeah.
I was gone.
Wow. Yeah. I was at that first Eat 'em and Smile tour. I was at the show and it was remarkable. I mean, there had been super groups before, but that was the first time that I remember sort of in my mind connecting the idea that this band had been put together to be like virtuoso at every instrument. But it was more than that, of course, because then you guys had such amazing commercial success. By the way, not that commercial success is the only thing, but every musician wants to be able to pay their mortgage.
This is true. Yeah, Dave was very, very smart, and he's I love him dearly, and it was his bat and ball. It was his game, it was his thing, and he did it right. He treated us very well, and we had a great time on that tour. And most of the ideas of anything that you see that is cool or clever or interesting were Dave's ideas, and that's just the way he is. He's quite a talent in many respects, and I love his voice too. But I'm forever grateful to him for giving me the break he did and doing that band with him, and working with Steve Vai and Greg Bissonette and Brett Tuggle, also just dear friends of mine and wonderful, supremely talented people. But we did it with a tongue-in-cheek comedy too. We didn't want to just go, hey, watch this stuff. We as a matter of fact, the solos we did in the show, the first couple shows, I'd go out and do my bass solo, and Steve would do his solo later in the set, and we'd end the show. Thank you very much. About 2 or 3 shows in, Dave called me and Steve, and he goes, the solo thing, it's not working for me. We go, oh, what does that mean? He goes, it should be like a giant tractor pull, like you guys battle it out. So, Steve, you go start. Billy, you run up behind him, grab his guitar and mute it and push him aside, and you play. And Steve, you push. And he orchestrated the whole battle thing. It was Dave's idea completely. And we did it, and people went crazy. Because now, like I said before about a bass solo, you want it for be musical, but also in a live show, you want some entertainment. You're there to not see somebody staring at his shoes, playing his amazing augmented, diminished, cemented chords and everything. We wanted, so when we did that, it was supremely entertaining and funny and fun. And Steve and I had a blast doing it, and it worked. So thanks to Dave, he created quite an entity with that Eat 'em and Smile band.
He did. He did, and I'll go on the record as saying you got that call because of who you are. Dave wanted consummate players. That was clear because he could have picked anybody. I mean, he kind of could have commanded having a lot of people, I'm sure, envious of and who would have lined up to audition there. So there's a little bit of, I think, bi-directional like goodness there.
You're very kind. Thank you.
But yes, I mean, he is for all of his showmanship. There's no doubt the man's got a mind for business and entertainment.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about you also did, and keep me honest on this because I didn't see this, but did you not tour with UFO?
I did. 1970. Oh no, 1983 it was, I believe. I had previously played or tried to work with Michael Schenker on his first solo record. He flew me to England in '79. Me and Denny Carmassi, who was a drummer for Montrose, and we went there and worked with Michael. Unfortunately, Michael was in a bad state, in a bad spot in his life, sadly, and he just didn't have it together. So we went home. We never went back, and he hired some other people later on. But the UFO guys knew about me also. So when Pete Way quit in '83, they called me to come do a European tour with them. So I did all over Europe with UFO. Quite an amazing thing. I'll sum it up by saying, when I got home from that tour, I went to the movies to see Spinal Tap, and it was not funny. But because I had just lived on most of that. So now when I see Spinal Tap, it's funny. But I remember sitting there in the movies thinking, oh boy, it's exactly what happened. So we had a lot of, but great guys, and I love UFO, and they're a great band. And unfortunately, a lot of bands get to a point where they're changing members, and you don't know if they're going to continue or not. And they were really wonderful people, but it was just kind of falling apart, sadly. So I was there to kind of witness it to some degree. But what a great honor, UFO, one of the best bands ever. I think I love them so much from the first time I heard them. So it was quite an eye opener. My first international tour. So.
Yeah. Well, and we'll go back to some of this Japan thing in a minute. But before we get there, I want to talk about Explorers Club, and I know that this is like maybe deep archive stuff, but Trent Gardner, who's not with us anymore, who kind of, I think, was instrumental in that pulling that whole thing together. You were on that Age of Impact record.
Yeah.
And that was, I remember, that was Magna Carta, and they were like the place for a lot of the real musicians to go and do really interesting music, sometimes with real progressive shadings. And Trent worked very closely with them. And this record was really good. And I think
I love that record.
I wish it had gotten a little bit, I mean, in the progressive community, it was certainly known, but it didn't seem to go much further than that. But you played with, I'm just going to read a few names. I mean, it had Terry Bozzio, Steve Howe, John Petrucci, Matt Guillory, Derek Shrinian, James Labrie. I mean, this was like a powerhouse record, and it had this great conception. How did that come about? Did you just get a call? Give us the story on that record. This is personal because I love it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I love that record. I think it was great. Now, the original versions, I wish they would put them out with Trent singing.
Oh, wow.
He sang things, and I loved his voice, but they wanted to go with a guy. Fine, he's the guy that's singing is a fine singer as well. But I should talk with Mike Varney. I think he set that up. He's a guy who connected a lot of musicians with everyone. He found Eric Martin for me for Mr. Big, and he brought Yngwie to America originally to start a band with me before he went with Alcatraz or Steeler or whoever he was at that time. But anyway, Mike Varney set that up, and I remember I went to the studio when it was recorded on ADAT. So when it was hard to really punch in and out. So I had to play a lot of the stuff full through without a mistake as best I could. Yeah. Anyway. So that made it, because now you can, play one note, give me a break, do the second note, you can kind of cheat your way through it if you want. But with ADATs, it's much harder to do that then. So it required me to step up to the plate and do a little bit better. So, and playing with Terry Bozzio on drums is amazing because I'm all about the drums. I watch the drummer. People ask me about guitar player, guitar player, guitar player. And I'm hanging with the drummer. It's bass and drums. That's where it's at. So play with someone like Terry in that context was wonderful. What a great player. But I remember doing it. The engineer's name, it'll come to me, Bill Matoyer, and it was just he and I in there laying the bass down to the pre-recorded tracks on ADAT, and sounded great. It was so amazing. I really love that record. I should call Mike Varney, and they should do a reissue with the original singing on it, because it was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, that would be really fun, and there might be a broader audience for that now than there was back then. It's certainly
I think so. Yeah.
Certainly easier
I
to.
know not a lot of people. When people come up to me after the show with sometimes a stack of CD covers this thick, and I go, "Are you sure I played on this?" And they go, "Oh yeah, look right there." I don't even remember, but I don't often see Age of Impact in there. It's not as well known. So I should do a post about it sometime too, and talk about it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's as the archivist, that would be a good one for you to expose for us.
I might even have the demos that they gave me to learn the songs. I believe I do, because I took all my cassettes, took 2 dual cassette players, 4 players in all. They're all stereo, so it's 8 tracks. Open up Pro Tools, 8 tracks of recording, hit Pro Tools record, and then hit play, and all of them had auto reverse too. So I digitized every cassette I had, and I had a pile 3 feet high and 3 feet wide of this, and I digitized all of them. So buried in there might be the original demos of that, which I'm inspired to find them.
Well, here's the thing too, man. There's so many of these people that were on this record who now are so much bigger than they were, that if you start saying, "Hey, here's some early great music you may have missed, and here's players," and because of the way we were talking about technology, right, when we were kind of putting this call together, there's a lot of people who could find out about that, and that music deserves it. It's that's a.
I'm glad that I did that archiving with everything. I have video archives, photo archives, and audio archives that are quite extensive. So a lot of stuff in there. It's pretty amazing. And some of it is very private too. I kept all my telephone answering machine messages from various through the year. And sadly, last October we lost Ed Van Halen. I went to a bunch of calls, a bunch of messages he left me over the years.
Oh wow!
What a great man. That was a tough day.
He's this is not any profound thought, but he is a player that changed the instrument.
Absolutely. And the band kind of changed the world. The whole world was Skinny Ties and Synth and Haircut 100. God bless them. Good, wonderful music. But suddenly Van Halen came along and the whole thing changed again. And it happened a million times. Elvis and everybody had grease in their hair. And the Beatles came and everybody washed it out and got Beatle boots. And the scene has changed many times through the years. It will continue to, I'm sure.
Yeah, then there was, I live in Seattle, so we helped implement all the grunge stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm very, to be honest with you, Billy, one of the reasons I do this show is I'm a musician myself, and I even though rock and metal still has a very permanent place, and in many regards bigger outside America, not just Japan, but in Europe than it is domestically, I may be laboring under a misguided assumption or desire, but I feel like the music is still is deserving of a broader audience than it's getting, and this is because it has people who labor at the craft the way you have to play. It's not all just sort of composed in a DAW. It's so that's one thing. That real songwriting, music that has this canvas, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it has this canvas for everything from the thrill and the fun to stuff that's really sort of meaningful and cathartic. And so from my corner of the world, I'm trying to find ways to present the music and get it a broader audience. And so all of which comes to a question. This is a philosophical question, but you're a part of, and we're going to talk about those here in a minute. you're a part of some recent groups that have had some real success. I wonder, from someone who's had been in so many groups over time, and different kinds of groups, where do you see the next potential inflection point for rock music? Is there one? Is there, you
Well,
know,
an educated guess is you're taking a shot at it, but it may not be. But I do think once you get saturated in one thing, the opposite thing starts to become appealing. And right now, most pop music is just kind of written by the same writers. A group of writers get together and they give it to one hip hop R&B singer, artist, whatever. And all there's no musicians involved. Really, most of it all is programmed. So uh, interesting with the pandemic too. Sales of guitars, drums, keyboards, and home recording are through the roof.
yeah,
They're Gibson, Fender, DiMarzio, Yamaha, banner years selling musical instruments. So I think that's a good thing and a good sign. And I think people want to. I think it may come to pass, just if history teaches us a lesson. Once that pendulum swings all the way one way, it's got to come back again.
yeah,
And so I can see the reality of actual players and singers doing it for real live. Maybe not in front of 20,000 people. Maybe not in front of 2,000. Maybe in front of 200 or even 20. But it being something real
yeah,
and live. And because I think at some point people will get hip to the idea that you can fake just about everything now. There's amazing drums and sound. That was all programmed. There's no drummer. There weren't any drums anywhere. The bass is killing. Yeah, it's all synth bass. Whatever. Vocals, yeah, they're all fixed. They're all pitch corrected. So the guy couldn't sing at all, but we got him. We got a great vocal out of him because we corrected it all.
yeah,
And that's not an invalid form of music. I want to be careful to not disrespect it. Because if you can make a piece of music that becomes a hit, I don't care how you did it or what you did it with, you just beat the whole system.
yeah,
And congratulations,
yeah,
no matter who it is or how you do it. I believe it's all valid. I'm not be such an old man that I won't look at the new generation of pop music and disrespect it. Some of it is quite nice. My wife listens to it all the time, and I go, "Who is that? Dua Lipa? That's pretty. That's pretty cool. Sounds good.
yeah.
But I do think at some point it may come back to people actually playing and singing again,
Well,
which would be nice.
here's what I've said this before in this program, but I think part of it for me, and this sounds high-minded, but it's there's the natural sort of pendulum, and we see that in everything. It's not just music; we see it in politics and everything else. The pendulum just swings. But the act of creating music, I think, is a necessary thing, and this isn't like my idea. But I've worked on this idea in other capacities. I've mentioned this too before. I did the novelization for The Astonishing, which was the Dream Theater concept record recently. And the conceit there is that it's not simply that music can be manufactured, because I think I saw a YouTube thing not too long ago that an AI wrote a whole symphony. And I don't even doubt that it's probably a good symphony, but it's more important than that, the act of creating the music. You like, even in this interview, you're holding your guitar. Like that process, I think, is important to humans, not all humans, but there's, used to be that part of your liberal education was had to take some music.
Yeah,
That was arts was part of it.
yeah. I will go out on a limb here, and I've seen many philosophers back me up on this, Schopenhauer in particular, but that music is the greatest art form, and it's the only art form which includes the viewer or listener to become part of it. Because when you listen to music, you're creating in your mind a pictorial version of what it is, who it is, how it's sounding, some other scenarios. So you actually become part of the creative process.
Yeah.
And to include the audience. Not that you don't when you see a painting or architecture or cinema, but cinema takes a lot of that visualization away from you. You're shown what it is they're talking about, and your creativity is stultified to some degree.
Good word, by the way.
Yes, and you can either be challenged or seduced. challenging. Music generally is challenging because you're challenged to figure it out, create in your mind what it means, how it sounds. Where cinema is more seduction, like wow, a car crash, and look how fast that goes, and computer generated animation, the most fantastic scenes. They're a little bit different. So, as an art form, I look at music as the greatest art form.
Yeah.
And that being said, humans and art are very, very. That's a very important connection, and it has been ever since the first ape picked up a charred stick out of the fire and scratched it on a stone. You know, art and the creating of images and sounds and the imagination being set free is supremely important to people's well-being, mental health, and intelligence, I think, as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think to take it like one step, or at least add to one thing that you said, is with music, you can, not only are you inviting the person to participate, but there doesn't even need to be there's like no language barrier. I mean, yes, there's music that's sung in a different language, but just recently I've watched some videos of, there's all these music contest shows now. And I was watching some foreign versions of that where I didn't understand the language, but the music, even the lyrical component of it, is touching. Like you can have a reaction to it in a way that if you can't read. I'm a fiction writer. I also write books, and I love that form of art. But if you can't read the language, it's not accessible. Music's not that way. Music, it can be played, and everybody can hear it and sort of co-create with it the way you were talking.
Absolutely, universal, and it's a great way to spread a language. We go to Japan, everybody's singing along with the lyrics. They don't know what they mean necessarily. A lot of good English speakers in Japan, of course. It's quite a popular second language. But and in Indonesia or Thailand, people, we go to in India, people coming up to us. Oh, I'm the one who wants. You know, they know the songs and they know the meaning of them, and it spreads. I like to see bridges between people, especially when there's a language barrier or a cultural barrier. I like to see those things bridged, have the ability to cross back and forth across that bridge both ways.
Yeah.
And music certainly, I think, has been one of the greatest culturalizing, civilizing, spreader of goodness forces in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And now that you've brought up Mr. Big and this transmissibility of the music with foreign speaking, you guys had a ton of success domestically, meaning the United States. But you had maybe even more success in Japan, did you not? And Asia Pacific, like you guys were giants there, even when Mr. Big wasn't always in radio rotation domestically.
We did it a little differently. Some bands think, oh, you go to Japan automatically, they're just going to love you. There's no problem. So they go there and they do a half-ass show and they never got asked back again.
Yeah.
We didn't look at it like that at all. We go, we're going to Japan. This is great. So we hit it even harder. Not we don't hit it hard every show, but we knew and we connected. I don't know how, I don't know why, but we connected with that audience. And we got there early and stayed late, shook every hand, kissed every baby, signed every autograph, took every photo in the lobby of the hotel. We took care of fans. So before the internet, we'd get little envelope messages. And in the envelope is a pen for you to answer with, stationery, and a stamped addressed envelope so you can send it to them.
Wow.
So they're very smart at that. And so they leave them up on the soundboard. And I get a huge pile. And we learned don't answer them till the last night, because if you do, then they'll send you another one and it doubles your workload. So we because there's a practicality of the fact we needed sleep occasionally. So I sit there and answer everyone and put a pic in there and, sign it and send them all out, take them down to the front desk as we were checking out, and they'd take care of them for me. Wonderful people, so generous with their time and skills. So we hit it hard and we made a lot of great friends, and we played all over Japan too. Most bands go Tokyo, Osaka, goodbye. We played Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, up north, Sapporo, Niigata on the west coast, Kagoshima down south near an active volcano, Okinawa, all over Japan. So it was quite in-depth penetration to the culture for us. I remember playing in a hotel that the numbers on the doors were in Japanese. So you had to remember, what room are you in? I'm in the three things and a stick through it, and then another over here. So, and of course, inevitably, we ended up walking into the wrong room or something. But and the funny thing, though, if you will, it wasn't just in Japan, though. In Brazil, we had 100,000 people on Santos Beach outside of Sao Paulo. In Italy, there was at one point 5 Mr. Big Copy bands, German, Spanish, Scandinavian Mr. Big Copy bands. So we did really well outside of America, which went, the whole world went flannel, grunge, and it was a change I think needed to happen too. It didn't happen as much outside of the USA as it did in. It did, and certainly in some places in Europe.
Yeah.
But in Japan, they didn't get it. So we actually were still doing great, having great success there, and in South America and what have you. So it's an interesting thing. We're very fortunate to have early on gone to all those places, and it wasn't always easy. I remember first time in Korea, it was tough. You know, the facility it didn't have it together, sound and lights, it was a problem. Now, Korea, in competition with Japan, they go, oh yeah, Japan, you think you can do that? Watch this. And now their venues are spotless and perfect, and the sound and lights are awesome, and their hotels are as good as it gets, you know. So we, but initially it was a tough time, you know. It was not an easy, cushy tour, but we did it anyway, and it really paid off for us. The way it really paid off is we got friends everywhere now. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't mean to suggest you guys didn't have success domestically. You did, and but yeah, I have a note here that I took that you guys, I think you were in support for Aerosmith, but you played 3 straight nights at Wembley.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a huge venue.
It's a big place. Yeah, we did the Get a Grip tour, European Get a Grip tour with Aerosmith. Great bunch of people, wonderful guys. Every night, Steven hit his note, nailed it. He'd get in early, run the stairs of the arena, warm up, go on stage, kill, get done. They'd wrap him in a blanket, throw him on the tour bus, and next day repeat. He was just a rock. He was great on that tour, and the whole band was really wonderful to us. We got there, our first show, the equipment truck hadn't shown up yet, and so they already offered for us to use their gear for the show. Fortunately, it came at the last minute, but it was pretty cool of them. They were wonderful people. I love that band.
Yeah, and you guys definitely have the reputation of being hardworking, you know, so that meaning the success was earned. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a bunch. It wasn't fabricated.
We didn't win the lottery.
Yes, you worked your way there. I want to talk just for a moment about niacin.
Great.
Oh my gosh, dude, this might have been the most revelatory part of you that I didn't know about until you agreed to talk to me, and I went and spent a bunch of time with this music. It's another area of your musical life that I think is criminally under sort of recognized.
Yeah,
wow.
It's tough to have a guitar in the band. A lot of people don't want to pay. We decided to use a B3 for the uninitiated. A B3 is the sound of "Give Me Some Lovin'" by Spencer Davis Group. It was used heavily in the Beatles and Zeppelin and Vanilla Fudge, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Yeah, so B3 was an instrument that just was so universal. And I remember in the very, very early days, it was more important to have a B3 player than a guitar player in your band. Because you know, if you're going to do copy songs, you had to have a B3 because it was in everything. Yeah. So I did. So a friend of mine played B3. We talked about doing some songs with a drummer, and he goes, "Oh, well, who's your favorite drummer?" I go, "No, Dennis Chambers." "Who's yours?" He goes, "Dennis Chambers." And Dennis Chambers is the greatest musician I know on any instrument. He is just a phenomenon of nature and a wonderful guy. But as a drummer, wow! You see the top list, you know, Vinnie Colaiuta, a couple other. Sorry, my memory. But anyway, my poorly voiced point is Dennis is always at least at the top. And if you ask the other guys who their favorite is, it's almost always Dennis. So he's quite awesome. So he really helped make that project come to life. He would come in and he lay down 15 tracks in a day perfectly, just amazing. And I've been in touch with him lately. He's doing great, and he's just what a wonderful, incredible man on top of it. Brilliant playing. But that's a funkified blues and jazz thing, and the keyboard player is more of a jazz guy. So I'm not jazz. I don't know that. I played a lot of jazz when I was very young, not really knowing what I was doing, but I liked it. And so it really pushed me to have to come up with ways to approach the instrument to fit in with what's going on there. And for that, I'm really grateful that it forced me to have to figure it out. Here's this passage. What do you play? I have no idea. Well, let's get to work.
The result is amazing. I want folks who aren't familiar with this music, even if sort of jazz and fusion and blues and stuff is not your first love from a genre perspective, you owe it to yourself to go take a look and listen to this music. It's just so musically refreshing and beautiful, and it's surprising as you listen to it, because you guys as players are doing some really interesting things. It's non-standard from the standpoint that we know you from all the great stuff in Mr. Big and David Lee Roth, but this music doesn't
it's not like that.
Not like that. But the musicianship is there, and the music it was.
We wanted to. There's some jazz. Great bass player Jeff Berlin, who was a jazz expert, explained to me one time, and I believe I agree with him on this. There's jazz that's in, and there's jazz that's out. Out is wild. Unless you're really a musical aficionado, tuned in and very well versed in what's going on, you're lost unless you just happen to like the sound of it. And then there's jazz that's in, that makes sense. It's more of a traditional arrangements and chord changes that would appeal to almost everyone. So we try to stay that way a little bit with Nice, and to keep it accessible.
Yeah.
Because I not only am I don't dislike jazz that's out. I do listen to it once in a while, but I can only take so much, and I know a lot of other people don't get it. Yeah. And it's a jazz is a thing. You kind of have to know what educated listeners for jazz are a must. Where some things you can move the other way a little bit. So we kind of stayed that way to some degree.
Yeah, I think you achieve that. I think it's accessible while also being, I think, satisfying for a seasoned jazz listener. To your point, I think jazz is kind of like Shakespeare. It's intimidating. The cadence isn't understandable with the language, but once you start to sort of dial in how to hear Shakespeare, you start to recognize the genius. This Niacin music is like that.
Good parallel.
Yeah. So I want people to go take a listen to this. It may actually be a gateway into jazz for you. I'm not a deep theory musician. I can't listen to jazz music and understand all of the musical theory that's underpinning it. Yeah. But every time I go to New York, there's a jazz club I go to, and they're doing music, I think, that families well with what you guys did, in that it's accessible, but clearly like these guys are not, and some of it's improvisational, but this is, it's accessible, but it's also really musical, and they're pushing their own limits. Like, there's just some great musicianship, and that's what this is. So I don't know, is there going to be more Niacin music, or is that a thing of the past?
I'm doing another record. Unfortunately, now it's really tough to get a budget to pay for the things you need to pay for to do a record. We don't need much money at all, and we just so there will be some label out there that'll give us a couple $100 for gas, so we can get up and record the. So it should be. I hope it happens, because I love that band, and it was a real challenge for me. I really had to, I would sit down at a Niacin show. I sit down and play, on usually a bar stool or something, and I got to plant my feet and get here we go. This is it. Ready, 3, 4. It was tough, but good. I love that. I love that kind of challenge to play to. Pretty cool.
Now you became. I don't know, maybe it preceded it, but certainly worked with Richie Kotzen in the Mr. Big days. He came in later. And is that the connection to Winery Dogs? Like, was it that musical association carried over? And when
To some degree, I knew Richie before he was in Mr. Big too for quite a while, and I always knew him as being a supreme talent and
yeah,
just great. And then when he was in Mr. Big, his voice is so great, it's so amazing. So he had kind of two lead singers, so that got a little awkward at times. So that ended, but then. I worked with when Richie would jam around LA. I used to go out and get up and play a song with him or something. He's always been a dear friend of mine. I love him completely. Pardon me. And he was opening up for the Stones in Japan solo. So he asked me if I wanted to join him. So I did, and we went over there. And we did about 5 shows with the Stones for just the Richie Kotzen opening for the Stones. But we always kept in touch. So when Mike Portnoy got in touch with me, well, let's do a band, find a guitar player, singer, and Eddie. And I don't know why I didn't think of Richie, because he would have been my first choice, but first I blanked on it. And Eddie Trunk suggested, "What about Richie Kotzen?" I got, of course. Yeah. So we all went over to Richie's house, and that's how Winery Dogs came to be. And he's been just spectacular. I always said the one thing that ever gets accomplished from the Winery Dogs is the people of the world learn that Richie's a superstar, because he is. He's just a great player, singer, songwriter, performer, and as good as it gets.
Yeah, he's very gifted. And that first record was not, I mean, unsurprisingly from the standpoint that the caliber of talent in the band is there, but like really well received. I mean, it had some chart positions on Billboard at 27. I know the fan reaction, like people who knew all of you guys from other things, or maybe didn't, and then they heard this music. It was like, I mean, even remember Eddie Trunk talking about this on That Metal Show, how much he liked it.
He was instrumental in launching the band. He was so kind to us. He's been that to many bands. He's a national treasure. Yeah. Really, really great. But yeah, the first record did very, very well. Second record, even better. Yeah. So we're working on a third one now. And hopefully that'll happen relatively soon.
So I know I saw some Instagram posts. You guys have done some recording, and you're going back soon to do more. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, we went and we wanted to write again, going back to a traditional way, together in a room. And we sat down and, what do you got? How about this? What about that? That's cool. That sounds kind of like a chorus. What put it together and hit record make a little demo of it. Go back, reconfigure. Write like I'm making no comparison at all. Don't ever make that mistake. I got bootlegs of the Beatles writing, and they're in a room, and what do you think? And they come up with an idea, and so many bands did it like that as well. But that was traditionally how you would write as a band. You're all together in a room and figure stuff out. So after we'd done the first and second record tour, we thought, well, if we continue like this, it could get pretty stale, because you get pressured. It's time to put another record out, and then you got to go on tour right away. Let's go live our lives and do our thing and go enjoy ourselves and reconvene here a little later, and which is what we're doing now. And we'll have stories to tell and adventures to express that we've all been through. And so it works out better writing wise for us. So we took a little break. And the band was always together. We always knew we were going to do this, but it was refreshing, because now back again. I'm happy to report when we were together recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had a blast. We had a great time. Went out and had a great meal every night, and hanging out and talking and telling our stories of all our adventures. And it's reflecting in the music. I think it's going to be very well received.
Is it too soon to know any timing on that?
Yeah. We don't know. Again, I'm not a guy that plans much. And the Winery Dogs, certainly that's true there. Just kind of a record is done. Okay, well, I guess it's coming out now. Yeah. We're not really sure. Musicians in general, I only speak for myself, to be fair to musicians who might have it together. I suspect some do, but I'm just kind of a rudderless ship on a windless sea, and just kind of floating along, and there's a show, and we don't, not a lot of planning or figuring or configuration going on. We just kind of let nature take its course. And for me, I think that's the best way too, because it really, as an art, it takes on a natural life of its own, and
Yeah.
calculating and scheming and figuring and slide ruling to get things done. I'd rather let nature take its course again.
Yeah, I like that approach, and I'm sure there'll be freshness in the record for all of that. Um, the other the other sort of touch point with Portnoy was the other group that is doing really well right now, and that's Sons of Apollo.
Yeah, that's a blast to play in. 5 guys, so I pulled back.
Yeah,
I hold back and play with Mike, of course. I love playing bass with Mike strumming. It's a riot. We have a blast. This ESP thing. He'll chicka dicka dicka da, and I at the same time I chicka dicka dicka da, and I go, how did you know? How did you know? Automatically together, like ESP. It's spooky at times. It's really enjoyable. One of my favorite things about performing live. Derek Chirini on keyboards, fantastic. Bumblefoot, what a supreme talent.
yeah.
And running the band, Jessica Soto, what a great voice. And not a hint of lead singer's disease. He's the nicest, easiest, hardworking, polite, cool, friendly, funny guy you could imagine. So it makes it for an enjoyable time.
Yeah, you guys, I mean, again, another kind of super group, but sometimes super groups don't land with songwriting chemistry. And the first Sons of Apollo record was very, very well received. And I know you guys have been, when it permits, you guys have toured. I think you've got some tour dates scheduled for next year. Is that right?
I believe so. Hopefully they will happen.
Right.
Still some uncertainties, but I do know 2022 is looked at now by most managers, agents, and bands that are going to be touring as when things are going to start to actually happen again. So
Yeah.
hopefully that.
And you guys have done 2 records, two studio records.
And then the one live with the symphony.
Yeah, that's right. Is there any? I mean, probably at some point, but a 3rd record, or is that just not even too soon to plan?
A little too soon. Unfortunately, the pandemic started just as we launched the 2nd record.
Yeah.
We had a little bad luck on our part, sadly. So we're caught between, well, should we continue touring behind the 2nd record, or we do a 3rd one? So we'll see. Again, nature will take its course, and the answer will reveal itself to us at some point.
Well, I'm hoping that you guys do a domestic leg of that tour. I feel like what I saw before was foreign dates, because I've never seen you guys live, and I live in Seattle, so I'm hoping that there'll be, when you guys do that tour, you'll come through our town.
Oh, I'd love to. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a riot to play live. It's pretty challenging. There's some parts that are really tough. And Mike and I look at each other like, okay, here we go. See you at the end. Yeah. And generally about 5 or 6 shows in, we start to hit it because it takes a while to translate between what you know, what you could record, what you could do in the rehearsal room or the studio where you're practicing for a tour to actually pull it off on stage. It's a whole other level sometimes. And it unfortunately takes a few gigs to do it. We managed to fake our way through the first couple without too many people knowing blunders. You learn how to cover up a mistake is an essential thing for any musician because you're playing live. You're going to make a mistake and you got to smile your way through it or look at somebody else and they think it was him, So there's all kinds of ways around that. But that jump to actually performing it live when it does come, it's supremely gratifying that when you pull that stuff off as it was intended, as it is on the record.
Yeah. Well, I've said this before, but as you always love to see a great performance live, but the inaccuracies are part of the charm. And I don't mean that in a sort of trivial way.
It's true.
You're hearing real musicians doing something live. And maybe not everybody loves that, but I love that. And to be honest, sometimes you'll see some eye communication between the musicians where someone's done a thing and there's a smile and you're just like being part of that as a listener is I enjoy it.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, there's several times I've made glaring mistakes and I'll just raise my hand. That was me.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Here, thank you. I'll be here.
Well, one of the things I applaud you for is you stay sort of active in answering this call to talk to me with people who are wanting to learn. You do some instructional stuff through your YouTube channel. You're also involved in this rock and roll fantasy camp I saw, and that's isn't that essentially what it is? You're training the next generation of rock musicians and some of the brass tacks?
Yeah, to some degree. One young lady I had in one of my band camps. Her name was Madame Mayhem, as she calls herself, and I ended up producing a record with her. Ray Legier played drums on it, and came out great. And she went on. Now she's, she of course she's off for the pandemic, but she's toured with a bunch of big bands and has a career. So that was kind of a cool result. It's happened several times out of the rock and roll fantasy camp. But basically, it's just they give me 5 or 6 players, singers, and I've got to make a band out of it and get them rehearsed up and get a song going and then get them on stage and have them perform it as a grand finale of the camp. And sometimes you get guys that can't play almost at all, and you have to work with them, and it's quite a challenge. And by the way, my bands always win every time my band wins. No way I'm letting them not win. But we've been an amazing emotional trip to see people get to the point where they get up on stage and perform in a band that they're playing. And I've seen tears and nervous breakdowns and panic attacks and freakouts. An amazing emotional change people go through when they're put through that procedure. It's quite amazing. I did one recently here in Nashville, and there was a gentleman who was the I think #1 gynecological surgeon in Canada.
Is that right?
Wonderful man, a Chinese gentleman, and he was a piano player, and he could play. But as far as getting up and play a song with a band, especially where you got to go, and I go, well, the part of the song is, I think we're doing a Elton John. I forgot the name of the song. Anyway, and Elton John, he's got the on the piano thing, and the guys go, I can't do that. My hands will fall off. I go, well, let's get to work. So I don't play keyboards, but I know enough to coach somebody through, and we got him there. And we've got it. End of the thing, he's up on stage playing the song, and no one was more blown away than him that he pulled it off. It was incredible to see, and that happens a lot. And then I do a lot of master classes. I'm not a teacher. I don't give lessons, but in a master class, I can show you what I did, how I got there, and then maybe take a look at you and see if there's anything I can interject that might help you along on your path. Yeah. And they've been very successful in that. I hear back, and I stay in touch with all the people I do master classes with generally. Hear back from them a month later, and they say, "Man, everything's different. I got it. It's, I'm now notice a change. I notice things getting better. I notice, my understanding of what's going on better. And that's my goal, is to bring about that result. So it's wonderful to see. And I love helping my fellow musicians in any capacity. But when I can do something along those lines, it's very gratifying.
Yeah. Everything you said there, is gold. There's, performing something that you worked on live, that's a magical experience. So helping someone get there has to be so rewarding.
Yeah, I think they did a movie on a fantasy camp, and they documented a lot of the things people go through. I mean, some people storm out and leave and they never come back, and some people are with tears dripping off their chin and worried that they can't do it, and the other band members encouraging them, and you create this camaraderie of a almost like a real group, and yeah. They stay in touch with each other over the years. And I just played on the track for one gentleman. It was a great keyboard player in one of our bands we did in Las Vegas. And of course, that band won the show too. We did Whipping Post, and he sang it. And he just sent me a prog track from a band called PFM, Italian progressive band from back in the 70s. And I played bass on his track for him. We got Bumblefoot on guitar. And so
wow.
I stay in touch with a lot of those guys, and all my masterclass attendees as well, very much.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. Just as a shout out to that, you're in good company there. The camp's got Dave Mustaine and Nico McBrain and Steve Morse and John Moyer. There's a lot of really quality people there.
Good bunch of guys, and the counselors. We have a great time together too. I've been there with a lot of different guys, and they bring other guys in once in a while. I I never had played with Sammy Hagar before,
Mm.
and he came in and he with Eddie Trunk in front of the whole camp was doing interviewing, and Sammy was talking. One of the guys in my band that I'm counseling raises his hand. I didn't know he was going to do this. He goes to Sammy. Sammy, why don't you get Billy Sheehan up here to play his song? And I go, gee, shit. And so Sammy goes, yeah, sure, come on up. I go, holy cow, bucket list. And we got up. He goes, well, what Montrose songs do you know? And I go, all of them. So we did Space Station #5, and it was how amazing. I love that first Montrose record so much. So at that point, I would actually became the only guy who ever played with every member of Van Halen.
Oh,
so
wow.
Played with Mike, played with Alan Ed, played with Dave, played with Gary Sharon, played with Sammy. And then Wolfie, I didn't actually play music with, but one time on a flight home from a benefit show I did along with Ed Van Halen, he picked up his son on the way, and he wanted to sleep on the flight home. So I played with his son. I got some paper, and we were doing number games and drawing animals and things like that. And Ed was sleeping away. He's looking over and goes, yeah, you'd make a good father. I said, go back to sleep. We're good. So technically I played with Wolfie. So I played with every member. I'm very honored.
Yeah, man, that's a funny story. And yeah, like music with all of those guys. And to kind of put a bow on that, this is everything we've talked about, the longevity of your career, the players who we all know and regard with affection for their ability and their music that you've played with, either because you founded a group or because they've wanted your participation, and then the groups have had this success. And because just the facility with the instrument and the diversity of music, it's why I regard you as one of those bass players. You've kind of changed the instrument, and you've inspired generations of bass players to play. And I'm not saying that just because you're on the show. Like, as I was coming up and being in bands, the bass players that I played with always used your name as a North Star in their quest to play the instrument.
That's wonderful. They're very kind. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, there's bass players that did it to me too growing up. Tim Bogert, Paul Samuel Smith of the Yardbirds, Jack Cassidy, Jack Bruce, Entwistle, of course. And one time I got so tired of people asking me, who are your influences? So I wrote them all down, like on my MySpace page. That's how long ago that was. You had to scroll for quite a while to get through who influenced me, and all the great bass players and other musicians too. But it's if it is the case that I have done something similar to another generation or younger players, I'm very, very happy to hear.
It's I don't think that's a debate. I appreciate your modesty, but I don't think that's in question. And this is not a greatest hits. This, you're still an active musician in two of the two of the, I think, most well-regarded rock groups that are working. So there's that. I have only two questions for you to close out. So we know you're working on the Winery Dogs record. Is there anything else you're working on that we can anticipate that's for you musically that's kind of next?
I produced a singer-songwriter here in Nashville. His name is John Statham. I live in Nashville now, but I'm not a country guy. It's not my thing. I am not. The Rick Rubin record with Johnny Cash, pretty amazing, but still I'm not necessarily a country guy.
Yeah.
Great. It's just not my thing.
Sure.
But this guy is a little bit of a country story song kind of a guy. Songs tell a story. And I heard a couple of his songs. I said, man, if you got any more of these, if you got 10 of these, we should do a record together. So we ended up sending me 45 songs that he had written. All just great. And I'd play them for people, and people would have tears in their eyes. Listen to some of these songs. Unreal. So Ray Luzier did the drums. Again, he's not a country guy either, but he concentrated his Luzierism down into this sphere of time and groove, and just a beautifully treated musicality that he does on this record. And we brought a bunch of locals in, a slide guitar, just genius slide guitar, pedal steel guitar player, violin player, mandolin, and the record is just mixed. And so that should be out relatively soon. and we're just also finishing up mixes on the new Talas record.
Oh, wow.
That sadly we lost our lead singer after he completed the vocals a few weeks ago. Phil Narrow, wonderful, wonderful guy. What a great voice. He killed on the record too. It was so great. But we knew going in there was a little problem. We didn't know how big it was, and then sure enough, when the record was done, we found out, and sadly we lost him recently. I posted about it, and so we're hoping this record is really a tribute to his legacy.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy, great songwriter, amazing vocalist, and taken way too soon.
Yeah.
Terrible thing, but sure. That record will be out. That those mixes are just finishing up right now, so that'll be out pretty soon too.
Okay, good. Wow, that's somehow I had missed that was on its way. That's really cool.
Yeah, we did that. We went back and we took our songs from when I left the band, summer of '85, to go with Dave. We had all these songs that we'd never recorded, and the talk initially was, well, we should bring them up to date and like redo the lyrics. And I go, wait, let's do them exactly like we did them back then.
Yeah.
And don't update. Let's do it like a little time capsule. We'll play it the same guys doing those songs again, recorded the right way. And that's the whole idea behind the record, is that let's just be real and play it. And the drummer, Mark Miller, is as awesome as ever. Mike Portnoy posted a picture of himself in his first rehearsal that would become Dream Theater, wearing a Talas shirt because he's a Mark Miller fan. Ray Lugier also tells a story back in Pittsburgh. His friends would get some shaky handheld video of Mark Miller playing drums, and they'd all sit around and watch a wobbly screen and freak out over Mark. What an amazing drummer he is to this day. So his performance on there is pretty awesome too. We got our original guitarists that we had in that lineup, Mitch Perry. He brought 2 songs into the band. We recorded both of them with him on guitar. Fantastic job by Mitch. And another guitarist we use also from the Rochester area. His name is Curie, and he's did the lion's share of the rest of the stuff as well. So very excited about the new Talas record. It's a sad but happy situation. You know, we lost Phil, sadly, but this record I think will really lay the foundation of his legacy, which is quite awesome.
Yeah, it's a good sort of testimony to him to have that as a living, breathing document.
Exactly right.
So the last question is this. Gosh, you've accomplished so much, but I like to ask musicians if there's another mountain they want to climb. And by that I mean, it could be musical, be like, I always wanted to write a musical theater show, or it could be creatively, I always wanted to be a sculptor, but it could also be, I've always wanted to race cars. I'm just interested in some flavor. Is there anything like, gosh, you're so busy, but if you had a window of time to do something else, is there a thing that you hold in regard for a moment in time, if you had the time?
Well, mostly I would default right away to music and getting into something other than the music I normally listen to, and trying doing more on bass and learning. Recently, I've been, there's a couple of pieces of music that I was falling behind on, and I didn't know why. Rocco Presti, a great bass player for Tower of Power, he does picking thing, and he did it with 2 fingers, I do it with 3, but mine kind of fell apart. So I spent hours and hours and hours rebuilding my whole 3-finger technique thing.
Oh, wow.
And going after that. So something along that nature where I just try to discover more, because it's just an unlimited adventure. There's a little chunk of wood with 4 wires on it, and you can spend lifetime after lifetime after lifetime pursuing it and still not cover it up, which is pretty cool. Aside from that, though, a lot of people have been pressuring me in a good way to write a book, because I got a lot of stories, not only stories about music and the music biz, but growing up and the dogs I had and catching snakes and frogs and what it was like, and so many aspects that when I do tell stories, my dad was a storyteller, recitationist. He was an Irishman, the gift of gab. He would tell stories and recite poems as a young man.
Oh, wow.
And so when we were kids, our dad would tell us these stories, and we'd laugh, even though we knew the punchline already. We'd laugh like crazy. Just amazing to hear him spin this tale and the visions it created in our minds. So I picked it up from him to some degree. So either telling a long form joke or relating true stories that actually happened. After a couple glasses of wine or something, they start coming out. People always say, "You got to write that down. You got to write. You got to write it." So at some point, I might want to try my hand at writing a book. I'm an avid reader, and I understand. Like I'm an avid listener to music. It helped me my composition of music. Being an avid reader, I believe, might translate to my ability to get what I'm trying to say down into words, which is an art in itself.
Yeah.
That I hope to try to do something with that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, even just in this conversation we've had, you've certainly made it clear that you know how to spin a yarn.
That's for sure.
So I think if you can fit it in and amongst all the music projects, I think that would be fun.
Yeah, and that's something I could kind of do anytime. While I'm on the plane, instead of
Yeah.
my iPhone out or a laptop. And I'm a big fan of Bill Bryson as a modern author he's hilarious and a genius. And he wrote a book called Short History of Nearly Everything, which is basically a science book,
Yeah.
quite an award-winning science book, but just brilliant the way he put it together. And he's also absolutely hilarious. You mentioned Shakespeare before. I've never been into Shakespeare. I know nothing about it. It's not my thing. I'm not attracted to it in any way, shape, or form. So I'm in an airport in Santiago, Chile, and there's an English section of books. And the only book of Bill Bryson's I hadn't read is his book on Shakespeare. So I'm about to get on a plane for 16 hours. Okay, I bought it. Utterly fascinating and hilarious. His book on Shakespeare, just brilliant how he put
I'll
it
have to
together.
look that up. I haven't seen that one.
And a lot of it was the underpinnings of the entertainment industry and how it started, because of those plays and how they put them on had a lot to do with staging and performance and what have you. A pretty interesting take on it, but yeah, I highly recommend it. So when I read a book like that, I think, man, if I could ever do an eighth as good as this, I'd be very pleased.
Yeah, well, there's a little project for you in between gigs and writing records.
I might have to wait for a couple of people to pass away first before I start writing about them, though. So
Sharing the skeletons. All right, man. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time. This has been so much fun and illuminating. I'm sure it's been for our viewers and for folks who will watch this later on YouTube and elsewhere.
So I'm going to spend the rest of the day playing some ZZ Top in memory of our dear friend.
Very good.
What a loss! What a great man! What an amazing band! So, when your viewers see this, maybe several days pass, but my condolences to the rest of to Billy Gibbons and Frank Beard and all the fans for sure.
Yeah, I don't play bass, but I'm going to go turn on some ZZ Top in memoriam. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, tell you what, if you'll just stick on the call just long enough for me to say a personal goodbye, I'll play the outro for the folks that are on the stream. And one last time, thank you so much, Billy.
Thank you, Peter. Very kind of you, man.